Hey, souls and spirits out there, welcome back to this sacred space where we explore spirituality, consciousness, and the deeper mysteries of existence. I am so happy you are here with me today. In this episode, we're going to dive into one of my absolute favorite topics. I love it so much that I actually wrote my master's thesis on it. So, what happens to our souls after we die? Do we live more than once? Does consciousness just end? Is this it? Is this all we get? Or does it continue in a new form, a new body, a new life? Today we are going to talk about reincarnation, the belief that the soul is reborn again and again, learning, evolving, changing through multiple lifetimes. This episode isn't about trying to convince you of anything. If you are completely against reincarnation, that is totally up to you. But this is an open exploration across cultures and traditions, so you can decide if this is something that resonates with you and you kind of put it in your own truth. At its core, reincarnation is the belief that the soul survives physical death and is reborn again into a new body. The word itself comes from Latin, re meaning again, back, or anew. Incarnar, if I say that right, incarnate, something like that, means to make flesh. It literally means entering the flesh again. In reincarnation believing traditions, life is not a straight line. It's a cycle over and over again. Birth, life, death, rebirth. The soul is often seen as eternal, while the body is just, a temporary vessel, a vehicle, really, for our experience here. Each lifetime offers new lessons, new challenges, relationships, opportunities for growth. Some traditions believe reincarnation happens, immediately right after we transition into spirit and then we just move straight into a new body. Others believe that there's kind of a waiting period, a spirit realm, a resting place, or a time of reflection between lives. Despite the variations of different beliefs, the central idea remains the same. We are more than just this one lifetime. So reincarnation isn't a new idea. It's actually one of the oldest spiritual beliefs in human history. Hinduism offers a fascinating take on it. It's actually one of the oldest ones on record that has actual sacred text stretching back thousands of years that have reincarnation kind of things in them. In this tradition, the jiva is the individual self, the part of us that thinks, feels, and lives in the world. However, beyond that, there is the Atman, which is considered, our true eternal self. The Atman is not seen entirely separate, but just a piece of the Brahman, the universal soul, or the divine essence, the underlying of everything. I mentioned this in our soul episode. So every Atman is believed to move through a cycle of birth and death and rebirth, known as the samsara, which karma is shaping each of those lives. But the big goal is to break free from this cycle, the samsara, to reach moksha, I'm hoping I say that right, a state of liberation where the Atman reunites with Brahman. According to Iswaran's translation of the Upanishads, which is actually the one I have, I really like their translations of sacred text, it says, I quote, "On this ever-evolving wheel of life, the individual self goes round and round through life after life, believing itself to be a separate creature, until it sees identity with the Lord of Love and attains immortality in the indivisible whole." End quote. So this journey is about moving beyond the ego and the material attachments that we typically have in our physical lives and aiming for a deeper awareness of one's true nature. Some branches of Buddhism, on the other hand, take a very kind of different approach to it. They do not see the soul as something permanent that moves from life to life. Instead, certain branches of Buddhism teach that what continues after death is a stream of consciousness, a flow of kind of experiences shaped by karma. The idea of the Atman, the no soul or the no self, means that there is really no fixed soul for each of us, but rather an ongoing process of cause and effect linking one existence to the next. This would mean that what continues after death is not a soul in like the usual sense of like how I would think about it, but rather a momentum of actions and their effects resulting from our consciousness. This concept can be kind of challenging for people to grasp. I have a hard time, dealing with it, not dealing with it. I have a hard time kind of understanding it because I do believe each of us has an individual soul. But instead of thinking of a fixed soul traveling from life to life, this tradition asks us to imagine a process like a river flowing onward, consciously changing yet never the same from, moment to the next. Rather than a soul, it's like a flame on, a lighting candle, lighting another candle. A continuity, not really a transfer. It's just continuing on. There's no really change. Rebirth continues until enlightenment is achieved, when desire, attachment, and suffering just completely dissolve. In this view, reincarnation is less about identity about each individual soul and more about awareness evolving towards freedom. In ancient Greece, Plato was teaching about reincarnation, and his theory of anamnesis was posed that the soul knows the absolute truth of everything before it was ever embodied in physical flesh, and that the process of life and death and rebirth is the process of remembering that knowledge rather than learning it for the very first time or relearning it over and over again. Reincarnation is often associated with most Eastern traditions, but there are some things out there that say perhaps early Christian mystics has had discussions of the pre-existence of the soul. I mean, who's to say that they didn't believe it? Who's to say it wasn't taken out of the existing books like so many other things were taken out? In Kabbalistic teachings, reincarnation is believed to help the soul complete unfinished spiritual work. I think so many people are really drawn to the idea of reincarnation because it offers meaning and continuity and a sense of spiritual justice that happens. So one of the key ideas that runs through the belief in reincarnation is karma. The notion that our actions in this life will shape what comes next. In different cultures, karma acts as the thread that weave together our many, many lifetimes, ensuring that what we do matters beyond just one physical existence. It is both a system of justice and a means of spiritual growth. Karma is the result of choices that we make every single moment and every single day. You may have heard people casually say things like, karma will get him, or may karma be swift in her justice, when they hear about someone doing something morally wrong. Even people I know who don't believe in karma in like a spiritual sense because it's not, laid out perfectly in their faith, they still often kind of agree that our actions have consequences. Reverend Terry Ryan explains in his book, The Keys to the Kingdom, that karma, quote, karma is the result or outcome of the decisions and choices we make and the actions we take within the framework of free will and personal responsibility. It is the highest form of justice, as it is self-regulated and self-administered. That is because we each create our own karma, not anyone else, end quote. And I love that. I love the idea of karma because, gosh, I had to see so many different things in my life of, a family member of mine has been kind of in and out of jail my entire life due to, drugs and stealing, just, bad behavior, let's say. And every time he goes back into jail or prison or whatever it is, he finds God again, finds Jesus. And then I hear people in my community, well, he's saved. He's saved again because he found Jesus again. And then he gets out and he does the same bad stuff. And then they don't say anything, and then he goes back in and he finds Jesus, and over again he's wiped clean because he accepts Jesus as his Lord and Savior. And that's great, but I also think there should be some personal responsibility in there. I don't think that people should be able to do bad things, and then just because they say they follow someone, a spiritual entity, everything should be wiped clean. All of the bad stuff that they've done is just wiped clean because they get right with their person. For me, there has to be some kind of give and take there for me to be able to accept it. And so this implies that we are alone responsible for the outcomes of our lives and how our future unfolds. I really like this because how many times have people blamed everything and everyone around them for them having a bad hand in life? Everything's just been bad for the entire time. And I'm not saying that crappy things don't happen in life and, maybe they were dealt kind of a badder hand than other people. But in this idea, karma helps me make sense of things, even relationships I have with people. I look at them differently. I look at, what especially is challenging or it like a relationship that has ended. Like, what did it have to teach me? Why did that happen? Was there some type of karma that needed worked on, or did I just add to my own karma because of that relationship? Every decision we make sends ripples into the future, helping or affecting not just us, but the whole of humanity kind of moving forward. When that thought really sunk into my brain, I really started thinking about things so much more before I made decisions. What are the ripples that will happen because of me? I think that every day before I do anything, what ripples outward will happen because of the things I do, because of the things I say, the way I act, the way I present myself, how I treat other people. Karma can help us make sense of this. And karma gives reincarnation its sense of kind of order and meaning. The choices made in past lives shape each life moving forward. So even if our bodies and memories change, the thread of moral identity remains. This makes reincarnation a form of justice, really, that extends beyond what one lifetime can offer. Without karma, rebirth would just be random and pointless. Why would that happen? But with it, every experience from joy to hardship becomes a part of a bigger journey of growth. Karma will also make ethics feel real and immediate. If our actions eventually come back to kind of bite us, then morality is not about following rules handed down from above. It is part of how the universe works. Hurting someone else ultimately means that we are hurting ourselves. And showing compassion to other people and other beings out there helps us grow spiritually. This view fosters a sense of responsibility that will span over many lifetimes. Instead of just seeing mistakes as kind of the end of something, karma and reincarnation view them as opportunities for learning and improvement. That's why this belief system is both kind of hopeful, hope that there's something else out there, I can, do this again. And it's deeply accountable, making me kind of aware of my actions. I'm not going to just go out and do bad things and just be like, well, I just went and did that, nothing's going to happen. No, I would be extremely aware of when is karma going to come back and bite me for doing this thing? Some people remember pieces of their past lives, even if they don't realize that they do. These may include, unexplained fears or phobias or, pain, different places in their body. I've seen that happen. Strong emotional reactions to places or things, feeling an instant connection with someone. Natural talents with no clear origin. How many stories have we seen of little bitty kids playing the piano just as well as any concert pianist, or being able to paint like Picasso, or just crazy things like that. Reoccurring dreams or vivid memories of something. Past life regressions have gained popularity recently. I actually have done them for other people, and I have had them done for myself, and they are always so fascinating, especially when the person starts to make connections to things in their lifetimes that we visit, and, the life that they're having now, they can really see how they're correlating or how they're working on something that happened in a past life, and they're really this life, they are working on that karma now. Because when I do regressions with people, a lot of times they will recognize the soul in the body of another person in that lifetime. That they, in a past lifetime, say person I was doing a reading for, in a past lifetime, they murdered their brother, or they stole something and murdered someone. And then in this lifetime, they are the little brother or daughter of the person that they murdered. And there is they have problems getting along with that person, and they just don't quite understand why. There could be some type of tension there. Well, that could be, after they've looked at that lifetime and realized, oh, well, crap, I, murdered that person in a previous lifetime. Of course, they're going to have trouble trusting me, or, whatever it is. maybe your souls have made an agreement to get back together in this lifetime and be family, so you can work on the karma that happened in that previous lifetime. That's just kind of one example. Another one, I know somebody who had a pain like in their shoulder their entire life, like just right here, always had a pain, never had any type of, they never got hurt from anything. They just always have had this like weird like almost like a phantom pain. They explained it. And then they did a past life regression and then realized that they had been like shot with like a bow and arrow in that shoulder. And they had that lifetime and they remembered that happening. And then once they realize that and acknowledge it and see where that phantom pain is kind of coming from, in this lifetime it goes away. That's just some of the really fascinating things that I have seen happen with people doing past life regressions. My own experience, when I was a little girl, I was maybe my daughter's age, so like 2, 3 years old, I would ask my mom for very specific things that like no little kid would know about. Like I was using very fancy words and I was asking for like a very specific type of dress. I'll have to ask my mom exactly what I said, but I remember something about looking for a very specific type of dress in like my armoire, and I'm needing it because I'm having to get ready for a very specific named like party. And I'm looking for different things that I need to lay out so my person can help me get dressed. And it's like, where would I even come up with the stuff for that at like 2 years old? Like, now that I have a daughter almost that age, there's absolutely no way. If she were to start randomly babbling those things to me, I'd be like, yeah, this is not from this lifetime at all. Like, where is this coming from? Like, where were you? Or who were you? Who were you in a past life? When I was growing up, I was maybe 10, I think maybe when it started. I started having these dreams like over and over again. I would have it at least once a week. And I was a little girl. I was probably 7 or 8. And I remember being in this blue nightgown. And I remember living in like a cabin. And I started hearing gunshots, like the big booms, like a muzzle loader or something like that. I'm not a big gun person, so I couldn't tell you exactly. But like the old-fashioned guns, like the big booms, and I remember waking up at that, and I remember thinking the war has found us, or something like that we were being like raided almost. And I remember getting up out of my bed and my feet being bare, and I went and found my little sister who was sleeping in my parents' bed in the next room over. And I couldn't find our parents, but I grabbed her, and she was maybe 3 or 4, and she had her own little nightgown on, and I took us out the back door and we hid underneath, like there was almost like a porch off our house, but it was like dirt, but we had like cut almost a little hole in like the dirt, and that's kind of where we hid and played. And there was a big wood pile beside it, and so it was kind of like easy to hide. And I took her down there, and we were being really quiet because there were people running through the house looking for our father. And it had to have been some type of war. I'll have to look back. I remember journaling about it because this happened for several years. Like once a week, I would have the exact same dream over and over again. And like after I heard the people leave, I grabbed her and we went running through the woods. And I just remember I still hearing gunshots, like there is a war going on around us. And I remember something hitting me, and I fell, and like that's where I wake up every single time. And I haven't had this dream in a really long time, but it's still so vivid in my brain that like I remember it, and I know that I didn't pick that up from anywhere. Why the heck would I be dreaming about that, and why would I dream about it once a week for several years? I know that was a past life. I know that little girl was my sister in that life. I could tell you the color hair I had. I could tell you the feeling of standing up out of bed and the feeling of the boards and the creaks in the boards when I got out of bed. And those are memories. I know those are memories. I know that they aren't just something I fabricated. I had other ones of being a Native American woman, still very young, like maybe in my early 20s, and I had 2 little kids. And I remember being in our little teepee in our hut, and I remember thinking all the men were gone because they were fighting a war or something. And I remember we were pretty close to it, but like all the men were gone. We were it wasn't quite morning yet, but it was still dark out. And I remember sitting there, just laying there with my children and hoping everything would be okay. And then I start hearing screaming, and I start to hear these big whooshes, and there is another another bad guy situation. Someone starts lighting the teepees on fire. And I'm trying to gather my children and gather as many things as I can so we can run. It ends horribly every time. And when I was in Egypt, I had another experience walking through the temple of Isis. While looking at it for the very first time, coming around the corner and seeing it, I just started hysterically bawling. And I was like, I'm home. I know that this was my home at some point. When we got off the boat and I got out onto the steps, I told the man, I said, I'm leaving my shoes on the boat. I can't wear shoes here. And he said, okay, that's all right. And I left my shoes and I was like, yep, I have to walk barefoot through here. And as I'm walking, I'm seeing almost like slips of people running by me, and young girls carrying linens and carrying things of water. And I remember thinking as I walk up, if I walk this way and I turn right and I go back in here, there's a little room. And I remember knowing where things were in that temple, and I had never studied that temple layout or anything. And we traveled through there and I listened to our guide, and I found out I was right about a lot of it, about where certain things were held and things that happened in specific rooms. And so I've had so many stories like that I know I'm not making this stuff up. And I know that I haven't learned it anywhere else. Over the summer, my family and I traveled to Montana for a friend of mine's wedding, and as we went out there, we picked a few little places to go visit along the way. And I told my husband, I was like, I have to go see the Badlands. I don't know why, but I want to go to Badlands National Park. And we, pulled in there, and I mean, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, but there's not a ton to do, especially with a 1.5-year-old. But I was like, I just need to drive through it and, drop me off. I'm going to walk a little bit. And I remember walking in this specific place, and there was ravines that just fell down just about everywhere, and you had to be really careful where you stepped. And I'm walking through there, and it's 6 a.m. in the morning, and I'm walking through there, and I just get the sudden feeling of just despair and sadness as I'm looking down in the ravine. And I don't know why, but I looked down and I was like, oh my God. I said, oh my God, he didn't make it. He fell. And then I'm looking around, and there's no one else out here. I mean, first thing in the morning, we were one of the first people in the park. And I'm like, that's strange. And I'm continuing to walk around, and I just feel this heavy sadness. I had lost something so precious. And I decided to sit down, and I kind of meditated with it. And I was like, okay, Spirit, what are you trying to tell me, or what am I trying to remember? And as I said that, I got a vision of these indigenous people walking across the Badlands and walking over those kind of ravines, and it being wintertime and it being so cold and so just unsafe. I mean, it was called Badlands because of how harsh the environment is. And I remember trying to walk over those ravines and slipping, it was like I was carrying a little boy, and I slipped, and he fell down into the ravine, and as he did, he hit his head and he died. And we couldn't get to him. We couldn't get him out. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have never learned anything about the Badlands. I have never researched it. My Native American heritage is more kind of the East Coast and Indiana area. And so I don't know the histories nearly as well to know if they crossed there or what happened. I know that the name came from a Native American word, so I assumed that there was some type of tribe, but it's so harsh there. There's nothing living, walking through there. I can't imagine them just living there. And so I couldn't figure it out. And as I got back in the car and I told my husband about, what I had experienced, and we kind of talked through it a bit, and we kept driving through the park, and we kind of got up on this ravine area, to overlook everything. And we were picking and choosing, some to stop at, some to not, because it's kind of the same view everywhere you went. And I saw it coming up, and I was like, I want to stop at that one. And he was like, okay. And so he pulled off, and I just walked up to it, and there was a big sign. And it was a big sign talking about the Native Americans that traveled through the Badlands to get to Wounded Knee. and how harsh the environment it was and how many died because of how unsafe the terrain was and the conditions were. And I was just like, oh my God, this is it. This is the connection of like what I was experiencing down there. And I mean, I don't have any proof. There's things throughout history that like that sign literally said that something like that happened. But like I can't, look up something and be like, oh yeah, there was definitely a Native American woman who lost a little boy. Like I can't say that, but I know in my soul, I know in my heart that those things happened, and I know that that was me, and I know that that happened to me in a past life. I mean, I felt devastated. Like I got back in the car and I was like close to tears because like, especially now that I have a daughter and I know how that feels to like, if something were to happen to her, I was just like, oh my God, like I was about to lose it. It was 7 a.m. in the morning in the Badlands. I'm sure if anyone walked up to us, they would have asked me if I was okay and if I needed help. Like, and that was just like, I was experiencing that and I was remembering that. I know I was remembering that. And so you may have had experiences like that. I've had so many throughout my lifetime that it's like, it's hard to tell them all, but those are my most like dramatic ones, especially the most recent one because it just happened in this past year that I remember. But whether you believe in reincarnation or not, or you've had experiences, I think it has some good messages for us, the belief in reincarnation, that we are more than just that one thing that we did or that one thing that we regret, or that we get more than just this one lifetime to see and experience things. We get more time to love our people. I'm so sad so much about the people that aren't here anymore. I have a very close friend of mine that died when I was a senior in high school. And sometimes, like, my memories of her will pop up, or I'll see a photo and I'm just like, I wish we had more time. I wish we had more time. We did not get nearly enough time. And I think, but it's okay because I'm going to see you again. Or when I was so close to Reverend Sharon, and I'm gonna cry thinking about it. But I think all the time to her spirit, like, I hope I see you again. I hope I have another lifetime with you again. Like, please make sure you reincarnate when I'm working on it, or I'm already reincarnated, or whatever it is. Please let us cross paths again here in the physical, because you were just so magical. And I think that about so many different people, that like I need more time to love them here on this earth, because it's different. It's different when we're soul beings, and it's different when we're in the physical. And I want that again, and we are more than just right now, right at this moment. So I would like to leave you today with a question, and that is, if your soul has lived before, what might it be here now in this lifetime ready to learn? What are you here to learn at this lifetime? So think about that. And thank you for spending this time with me today. If you have resonated with this topic, or you have memories of a past life that that are vivid for you, I would love to hear about them. Send me an email at soulandspirit.life@gmail.com, or find me at Soul and Spirit LLC on, all social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is. Find me and tell me about them. I would love to hear about your stories. I love reincarnation. I studied under the teachings of Dolores Cannon, and she talks about it like she said, I love it. It's like time travel. You get a real life time travel, and you get to experience and hear about so many things. And so I love it so much. So until next time, stay curious and stay open to all there is out there. I'll see you soon.